What is up, everyone? A little bit different today, as you can see. It's me flying solo. Matt Ibanez here. Ibby, till Mets do his part. As always, I'll get to the chat in a minute. I see people are starting to roll in. I know there was some confusion maybe when we posted yesterday that we weren't going to be here. The plan was we weren't going to have an episode. But then I said, you know what? I have a little bit of time. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to squeeze it in. Not even sure if this is going to be a pod episode or not. But I wanted to come on here, have a conversation with you guys, get the chat going, get things, it's a little bit cold at the moment. It's not simmering too much, but other things are happening in the game of baseball. And there are some things that came out just before I came on live when it comes to our Mets that we're going to talk about. A couple things happened since we last hit record, John and myself. So I'm excited to get this thing going and to cover some of those things that I think are important, not only for our Mets, but things that have happened close to our Mets that can affect us moving forward throughout this entire offseason process. But as always, shout out to everyone who's here so far. So we got about 10 people and counting so far in the chat. Let's see who's here. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Douglas Barnes. Thank you for coming in as always. Yamid, happy Thanksgiving. Shay, what's up? Carlos in the building. Shay saying, let's see, Ibby is our only free agent left. Why we lost John to free agency. Look, John is a little bit busy today. Has a couple of things that he had to get done, which is why we thought we weren't going to have the episode. But then I said, you know what? I'll make it work. And I'm always willing to try and test myself when it comes to flying solo to see if I can keep things proper, keep the conversation flowing, and not only talking to you guys here, but also following along with what's going on in the chat. Not always the easiest thing to navigate, but I see some more people coming in as well. So it's good to see Ant's in the building. Okay, I have arrived. I am back. He is alive and well. Thank God. Subway to Shea will be back shortly. Ant's back to feeling well, so I'm excited that he's doing good. John's here. What's up, John? Stevie Mac, as always, singing all by myself. Look, I'll do what I can. My singing's terrible. I apologize for that. But I want to get into some of the things that have been curious to me, that have been bothering me a little bit when it comes to the Mets so far in this very early offseason. But one thing I did want to hit on to start, before we dive into the questions, the comments, the concerns about trades and potentials with prospects and things of that nature, a little bit of house cleaning. That being the front office, all right? A lot of changeover has gone on, not only with the roster. We know that David Stearns has us going from the 40-man. We're down to 28 right now, so he has a lot of work to do in that sense. That's always a big talking point for Mets fans, as it should be. We want to see how the roster gets filled out. But two big hires since the last time we have hit record have happened within the Mets front office. The hiring of Chris Gross to be the new VP of amateur scouting, and the hiring of Andy Green, who was a candidate, I believe, in the beginning for the manager job, actually hooks on with the front office to run player development. Now, the interesting thing, really, the fascinating thing when it comes to Chris Gross and everything that he's done in Houston. The Astros, and I'm blown away by this, the Astros in his time there had 329 draft picks, 77 of which reached the major league level, which is a 23%. That makes him the highest mark above the Dodgers at 23%. The Dodgers were at 20% of graduating people to the majors. You know who was 30th on that list? The New York Mets, dead last, where they had 328 draft picks. 30 reached the major leagues, which is at a 9%, which I believe is 2 or 3% lower than the next closest team. I've said multiple times on this show, I said it on Carson's show, on Mets Weekly this past week as well, the development of prospects within this system has been a problem for a very long time. And I'm going to give now Chris Gross an opportunity. I'm going to give David Stearns the opportunity to change things. But it's hard to assume things when it comes to prospects because, again, when you see something like this, you see 329 draft picks, right? 77. So 23% is considered remarkable for the major leagues. That goes to show you how hit or miss prospects can be. So we can't always assume when it comes to plugging in guys. As much as we like our prospects, and Mets fans love their prospects, but sometimes it's a little bit dicey to assume that they're going to be stars or even superstars. It doesn't happen that often. But still, remarkable to see that the Mets are so low. It doesn't shock me, but just when you see it written on paper in comparison with what the Astros have been doing, you can understand maybe a little bit more as sensitive as Mets fans were when Justin Verlander said his things about the Mets and analytics and things like that, saying how they're so far behind the Astros. Well, you can see that the Mets have been working behind the eight ball for a very long time, which is why we need to make sure we give David Stearns and his new brain trust an opportunity to actually succeed. As we're looking through, I just want to come through the comments real quick, see if I caught or missed anything. Seeing Theo jumping in here asking me thoughts on Phil Nevin possibly being the new bench coach. Look, I have no problem with Phil Nevin. I know he gets a lot of flack from a lot of people, but I think the idea of Nevin, to me, with the connection to Carlos Mendoza, makes a lot more sense as opposed to hiring what might be an out of touch, since he hasn't been in baseball for the last 13 years, Willie Randolph. I know that was an idea that many thought that they could latch on to, but I think if Phil Nevin ends up being the guy, great. I have no problem with it. I think that if you allow your new manager to choose the people that he wants to be around and what works best with him is the smart thing to do. Let's take a look. John saying there, I keep looking at that depth chart and it is somewhat concerning. Look, I'm going to bring this one up again because I can have it here and I like working these graphics now. When it comes to this overall depth chart, when it comes to this team, look, the projected WAR across the board is not that great. And look, these are not going to be, or this is not going to be the opening day roster. There's going to be changes. New people are going to be brought in. But it just goes to show you that a lot of work is going to have to be done. So I can understand why it is concerning to you, John, because it's concerning for, a lot of people at this point. Carlos, as always, Carlos loving the hack game. I appreciate it. And then I can see, Stevie Mack loving the hires. And also, Shay bringing this one up. I was going to bring this up as well. Kevin Mahala, the new minor league hitting coach, came from the new minor league hitting coordinator coming from the Phillies. I believe he's a Jersey guy too. So Jersey stand up as always, representing there. But no, always a good thing. And I love that we're starting to see the trickling in effect of the front office and how guys are finally, falling into place. And I think they're going to have everything in order by the time the winter meetings rolls around. So this team is ready to rock and roll. So as long as Stearns is getting his lieutenants and everyone that he wants around him and throughout the system to make this place what he thinks it can be, it excites me. And I know that we as fans are more, excited about the idea of players, as we should be. It's the product that we watch on the field. But I've said multiple times the last couple of episodes that I am so excited to watch David Stearns take this basically blank canvas at this point, because again, having only 28 on a 40 right now is pretty insane. But as you can see from that chart that I just showed you and what John was just mentioning, the cupboards are pretty bare. When you take away the Alonsos, the Lindors, the Nimos, the Diaz's, who's coming off of an injury, but when you take those guys, and Sangas, when you take those guys away, it's not the deepest or greatest of rosters. So a lot of work needs to be done, and that work is going to get done over the next handful of weeks as the winter meetings start to get rolling. Mikey, whoever Mikey here is, Ibby, hope you've been well. I have been well, Mikey. Thank you for asking. Let's take a look here. Ibby, what do you think about a move for Glasnow later for a third or fourth? Look, I'm going to get into Glasnow. I'm going to hold that comment for a little bit later because I do have a whole thought process on Glasnow. But one thing I wanted to pull up real quick is really what's gone on in baseball to this point, that not only it's adjacent to the Mets, but what's really going on in baseball that's also affecting our Mets. And you can see here the hot stove of note: Aaron Nola signing for 7 years, 172. Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson both going to the Cardinals, 10 and 12 million apiece. Eugenio Suarez traded, and of course Yamamoto and Imanga have been posted. Now, the reason why I brought this up and why I want to talk about it, even though these aren't really Mets related, but it's kind of affecting the Mets in a way. When I see players like Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson getting 1-year deals for $10 and $12 million, it does kind of change the idea of the market. Because if those types of pitchers are getting those kinds of contracts, it's probably eye-opening a little bit to even a David Stearns who's going to say, I'm really going to have to shell out some cash to try and get even those, those stopgap type of players, the innings eaters and things of that nature. I had been saying Kyle Gibson was a guy that I thought would fit for this team because he eats innings, a guy that goes 190 innings. We talked about it last episode. I talked about it on Carson's show this past week for Mets Weekly, just saying how the lack of innings for this team is alarming. And when you lose guys like that, look, they're not world beaters. And I've said before that this team is not going to go out and sign, so many star players. As much as we love the Yamamotos and the potentials of the Amangas or even the Montgomerys or the Rodriguezes, like I would love to have all those guys, but they're not going to spend that much money. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go about navigating the back end of the market as it's starting to get established for what the price tag is going to be. I'm well aware that money is not an issue for Cohen, but I do think that they're going to try to spend a little bit more smart when it comes to filling in these spots. I do think that they're going to be all on Yamamoto, and how they go about handling things post that, plan and strategy, whether they get him or they don't get him. How they go about handling that is going to be very interesting, especially when you see players the ilk of Gibson and Lynn getting that type of money. One thing is definitely clear. Pitching is needed across the game of baseball. And if they're going to lower the pitch clock from 20 to 18 seconds, and if injuries are piling up as it is, that just goes to show you that teams are really going to try to stack up and pay guys to be pitchers, because they're going to need that depth, because odds are they're going to assume a lot of injuries are coming. But one thing that I did find interesting was that the Cardinals now own, or I should not own, but have the leader in hits given up, home runs given up, and runs given up. I'm sorry, hits, home runs, and runs that are leading the front end of the rotation with Miles Mikolas, Lance Lynn, and Kyle Gibson. A wild stat, to say the least. I thought that was interesting. And of course, they're paying $22 million to those pitchers now, as they're probably trying to, again, get those innings to bring along their younger arms. But let me just go to the chat now, because I don't want to fall too far behind. Again, guys, I apologize because I'm going back and forth here, and handling the chat solo is never the easiest thing, but I'm going to do my best to see what I can. Looking at Carson here, saw the notification. Thank you for pulling me out of a meaningless Twitter argument about Luis Guillorme. Wednesdays can be tough. Look, people love Luis Guillorme. I'm sure some people in here like Luis Guillorme, but as I said, and as Carson has said, it's time for this team to find some more talent. And you're at a point now where you can get better and be better than the Luis Guillormes, Tomas Nidos, those types of players on your bench. You can do better than that now, and it's time to shoot higher as a fan. Oh, sorry, I missed that one, Paul. What I was saying, that Eugenio Suarez got traded to the Arizona Diamondbacks for basically a bag of balls. And I brought that one up because people had mentioned, and we mentioned on Carson's show, the idea of a Eugenio Suarez because of his power and how it kind of fits in. Maybe he could have been a guy that was targeted, but he goes to Arizona. They fill in the gap as a little bit of a stopgap between what might be coming with Jordan Lawler at some point, moving on from Evan Longoria. They get possibly a 2-year stopgap there with a decent contract, and a guy who's averaged about 20-something home runs a year. Going from Seattle to Arizona might even boost those numbers back up, because he had a little bit of a down year this year, but he wasn't that bad overall. Looking here, Glasnow is a rental. Talking about Glasnow, I'm going to bring up a Glasnow point in a minute, because I do think that he is such an interesting person to talk about, because I think a lot of people are missing the point when it comes to a Tyler Glasnow type. I understand the injuries, but we're going to get into that in a minute. Talk about pitching as a hot commodity, things of that nature. Good. Yes, the Cardinals led the offseason in lack of talent. Correct. Look, I like those types of pitchers when you're filling out with higher upside arms. And, if we're going to talk about high upside, we might as well talk about, the highest of upsides when it comes to pitchers this offseason, and that being Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And a tweet that came out before from Boston Sports, basically saying how the longstanding rumor, if you will, of Yamamoto being afraid of playing or not wanting to play with other Japanese players, it comes out that he is willing to play with Japanese players. And then it's followed up by Michael Mayer talking about how 10 teams have reached out already, and he has no issues sharing the spotlight with other Japanese players. I know there was a whole thing on Twitter, and rumors get bantered about how in the Japanese culture, it was being seen as though if a player doesn't like being underneath, they like being the senior, and the idea of Japanese players playing together wasn't so much of a thing to do based off of culture. But he comes out and he says, I have no problem sharing the spotlight with other Japanese players or playing with Japanese players. And obviously, we, as the New York Mets, have a prominent Japanese player, that being Kodai Senga, but other teams do as well. So, the likes of the Red Sox and the Cubs and whoever signs the Otanis and the Amangas of the world, and the Jays have Kikuchi. Like, there's plenty of Japanese talent throughout the game. So it doesn't automatically mean that the Mets are all of a sudden a front runner, because I know I saw a lot of Mets fans jump out right away and thinking, oh my God, this is great. We have Senga, we're getting him. It's like, well, it's not like, Kodai Senga is not the only Japanese player in baseball. There are other guys as well. I'm just trying to get across here that I think a lot of Mets fans' expectations are really through the roof. And I think that the conversation I'm going to have with you guys today is to almost lead a temper your expectations type of conversation. I'm not saying don't have, grand ideas, but understand that some of those grand ideas are just that. They're ideas, and they're not always going to come true. As much as you think they make sense, doesn't automatically mean that it's going to happen. We have to allow Stearns and his new front office to figure out what they're going to go about doing, because again, I don't think everything is going to be solved when you have so many holes like this team does in one offseason. And obviously bringing up the obvious and 100% true. If Yamamoto signs elsewhere, they better have a plan B ready in the chamber. Look, if there's one thing we have known or we have seen with this front office, at least since over the last 2 years, even though Stearns is the one running it now, they have been quick to pivot, and they always seem to have many irons and different fires. So I think that, as they're talking and working the Yamamoto market, they have an idea of what they're going to do next. Now, what makes me so interested about that is what type of direction will they go? If they lose a Yamamoto, do they still go high end elsewhere, or based off of the market, high end in their opinion? Last year, we saw you lose DeGrom, they pivot to Verlander because that's what they felt was on the same level. That's not really there this offseason, because who can you really say, unless you really plan on paying a Blake Snell, because Aaron Nola is gone. I don't think Blake Snell is going to be a target. I don't think they want to pay that big of a contract for the age that he's at. Also losing the qualifying offer, I don't think they want to do it. Would it shock me? No, anything is possible, but I don't think that they would pivot in that sense. But then that brings up the question, if they don't pivot to a Snell type when they miss on a Yamamoto, does that mean they're going to dabble and go after two middle of the rotation type of arm to just try to go with a depth overall approach? Do they attack the Montgomery market? Do they attack the Eduardo Rodriguez market? Do they attack the trade market? Okay. I know Carson brought up a great point on his show, and I'm sure he'll be in the comments as well, talking about how if they miss on Yamamoto, that they go right to the trade market and try to figure out what they are comfortable with dealing and trying to get in a young arm, whether it's on a 1 year, that being of the Corbin Burns type, whether it's on the 2 year, if you are high on a Dylan Cease or anything along those lines, or even the aforementioned Tyler Glasnow, which has been a huge talking point amongst Mets fans for the last couple of weeks. And, when it comes to Glasnow, in my opinion, when it comes to Glasnow, I think that the thing that gets talked about the most is obviously the injuries. And I know Ant's in here. I know Ant's not big on Glasnow because of the injuries, and he can talk for himself in the comments as well. And I'll make sure I bring up those so everyone can see. But I think when it comes to a Glasnow, the reason why I have no problem with the idea of bringing him in is because, I've been saying this and John has been saying it. It's just this team overall, not only in the starting rotation, but also in the bullpen, it lacks overall arm talent. And you can say, well, Ibby, like, this guy is barely on the field. He's pitched 120 innings twice in his 8-year career, and he's making $25 million. I don't care about the money. I really think that when it comes to a trade for him, I think the Rays realize that they're not going to be getting that much in return. Because if you're asking, again, we're talking about it, major league teams are going to be talking about it, okay? He has an extreme amount of talent. Can you harness said talent? And you can say, well, the Rays haven't been able to. Well, I can also say that the Rays have had a very hard time keeping any of their pitchers healthy. Now, does that mean that they're going to fail elsewhere? Well, Blake Snell left. Everyone thought Blake Snell leaving, and when you trade with the Rays, that means you get sold a bill of goods and they end up breaking down. Sometimes that happens. Sure. Everyone looks to Chris Archer and how he went to Pittsburgh and basically became nothing. But Blake Snell goes to San Diego, wins a Cy Young, and now he's going to get paid big. So it's like, it doesn't automatically mean that when you trade with the Rays that you're going to end up with the short end of the stick. And let's not forget, David Stearns has not been afraid to deal with the Tampa Bay Rays. He's done it when he was in Milwaukee, when he traded away Rasmussen to them, and everyone talks about how, he was doing so well before he got hurt for the Rays, but then no one really looks at the fact that Willy Adames wasn't doing much in Tampa, and then he came to Milwaukee and they unleashed him, and he really became a big time power hitter for them and really helped them in that lineup. So Stearns isn't afraid to deal with these smarter teams because he himself is a smart human being. That being said, I have no issue. I think the idea of a Glasnow, and I think we've also been hearing a lot about the Manuel Margots of the world. Manuel Margot does not make sense to me, straight up. It doesn't make sense because you can spend $10 million and get a similar or even better player on the open market as opposed to giving something up for him. But if you said to me, hey, we're going to give you Glasnow and Margot, and you got to eat $35 million, and you can give us less if you eat all the money. Now we're talking here. I still think straight up for Glasnow is something that could work, but I wouldn't be shocked if that was also a talking point where they eat $35 million between the two players. Now, when it comes to Glasnow's health, I get it. But for me, looking at this team now, I'm willing to take a risk and take a chance on guys that have talent. I'm willing to risk it on upside. And you could say, well, he's going to give you 5 starts and get hurt. If that's the case, fine, because I'm not too worried about what I'm giving up to get him. Now, if the conversation is with the Rays, if they're like, hey, you got to give us, Luis Angel Acuna and Christian Scott. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, that's not going to happen. At least in my opinion, that's not going to happen. I know Carson will gladly ship off Luis Angel Acuna and his noodle bat, but the main thing here is I think that the lack of talent overall on this team is something that is being attacked. And I think I have no problem with that. If you want to go after younger players, upside, I know Glasnow's 29, but players with extreme upside and roll the dice, I have no problem with that. I really don't. And to be honest, if I'm going to, and I know, I'm sure me and John will do a breakdown of what our dream off seasons are. I'll save that for him. But when it comes to, rotations, and I know that Ant put something out, and I know Nelson, Amish country fan, put something out about ideal rotations. If you said to me we went into this season and we had something along the lines of if they did land a Yamamoto and traded for a Glasnow, and you have a Senga and you have a Quintana, and then you use the back end for some more depth type pieces, I don't have an issue with that. I mean, it's very volatile, extremely volatile, but it's a chance that for me, at least, I'd be willing to take, because as much as we as Mets fans, like certain players, we often bitch a lot too when it comes to certain types of players. So would I rather risk it and watch someone like Tyler Glasnow pitch for me as opposed to trotting out Jose Butto or Tyler McGill or even a Joey Lucchesi? Like, would I take the risks to watch that pitch for me instead and have some more upside? Yeah, I would take that opportunity. Yes, it's volatile. Yes, it's risky because of injury, but it's one that I think I would definitely roll the dice on to try to get more talent overall on this roster. I know I've been ignoring the chat a little bit, so I'm going to go over now and see what we got here. Carson coming in saying, sign Yamamoto, trade for a number 3, or sign a number 3, trade for a frontline arm. That's how you start this winter. Look, I'm with you. I really think that the overall market that they're going to be dabbling in is the pitching. I think the hitting's going to be secondary. So how they choose to attack it is going to be very interesting. Carlos saying, I'm willing to bet $100 of my money. Okay. Well, if I had $100, let me know where it is, because I would love to have it. I really do. I think that they're going to be all in on Yamamoto as they should be. Makes all the sense in the world. Timeline, age, need, everything is there. It really comes down to what the player feels. If if it's about winning as opposed to just money, because let's be honest. Right now, all the Mets have to offer is money. If we're being true with ourselves, okay, I love my team. You guys love the team, but if we're being honest, right now, all they have to offer is money. Other teams, high end teams, and the report said there are at least 10 teams so far. Look, higher end teams, better teams, other teams have money too. They're all going to be in this market. So if money is similar and he likes the idea of playing for playing for the Dodgers or playing for Boston or playing for Chicago, look, it's a reality that might sting if it does come to fruition and he goes elsewhere. But I'm very confident in the approach and the possibility of Yamamoto being here, and I'm hopeful that they do get him. Douglas Barnes saying Hefner can fix Glasnow. I wish John was here right now because I know John is a Glasnow guy, and it would be interesting to see him, talk his way through this one because he has his feelings on Hefner, as does Carson. Would Glasnow work in this scenario? Would he get hurt more? It would be an interesting talking point for sure, and one that I'm going to make a note of to make sure I bring up if this is still a potential rumor next time we record. And not sure if Glasnow needs to be fixed or he needs to be put into bubble wrap. Fair, very fair. Carson saying Glasnow does not really need fixing. They just need to make sure he doesn't drop dead every 3 months. Very true. Very true. And it's incredible to me how impressive Tampa Bay is. Like when you look at Tampa, like everything that they've done from the lack of money to producing players to pumping out pitchers, but the turnover for them when it comes to the injuries, like everyone, like I love Shane McClanahan, love watching him pitch, and now he's gone for the year. And what Jeremy Springs was doing last year, he was awesome. Then he gets hurt, and then Rasmussen gets hurt, and they turn around Zach Eflin. They sign him for pennies, comes in and becomes a stud. Now I'm afraid that the guy's going to get hurt next year. They're so talented in making these guys, but keeping them healthy has been the biggest bugaboo for them. It really has been. Paul Revere, everyone can trust Paul Revere, saying that he can fix Glasnow. So I'll hold you to that, Paul. Backing up Ant here so he can just defend himself. I don't want to make it seem like I was putting him down or anything. I'm all for Glasnow if we don't have to give up a lot of prospect or he's the final piece. Understood. And I think it's well known as more people are reporting, more respectable people are reporting on how the Rays are really trying to get out of that contract. And I'm telling you, I wouldn't be shocked if Margot is attached to that. So it's like, hey, you want this guy? You got to eat $35 million. That's where the Mets can really succeed when it comes to trades because they can still say, I would much rather eat that $35 million and take the chance here as opposed to dishing out money for a free agent that might be of a lesser value. Let's take a look. Coming through. I love Wardy. Thank you, brother, for being here. If you're still here, I hope all is well. I've been going into your chat lately too. I haven't been throwing those super chats, but I will for my support as always. But yes, we stand Tyler Glasnow. Look, I really think that maybe a change of scenery can help. It helps Snell. Didn't really help, Chris Archer. But again, it's a risk, but it's 1 year. And if it works, fantastic. You have an idea if a guy can pitch in New York and if he can succeed here, if he translates well, and if he doesn't, you let him go. Because again, I don't think it's going to cost that much to get him. So I really don't see the downside here. And people want to automatically say, oh, you trade for the guy that he's going to be out all year. Well, if that happens, it's baseball. Everyone gets hurt. Any pitcher that you go after, we all want Yamamoto. He can get hurt. You want Jordan Montgomery? He could get hurt. All these guys, any pitcher, which is why it's always frightening to give big money to a pitcher because of the opportunity for them to not only provide a bunch of innings, but when they do that, they can get hurt. some guys more fragile than others. It's unfortunate, and I think it sucks because if you're going to lower the pitch clock, I think we're going to see more injuries because I think these guys are working too fast and they're throwing harder and harder every year, and velocity gets paid. So it's like, I think you're going to see more injuries. So it's no matter what you do, there's always going to be a risk, regardless, whether it's, developed talent or talent that you trade for. Want to bring Johns up here. I thought it was interesting. I'd rather spread the money around or spread the money out and get Rodriguez, Shota, and then trade for a Burns or Cease. Look, I have no problem with that approach either. If they miss out on a Yamamoto, and if that's the way that you want to go, as opposed to spending the big wad of cash that it's going to take in order to get it. But what's interesting to me really is the Yamamoto market. I know everyone's in it. 25 years old. It's different than Senga's market. But I know it was brought up today, talking about I think it was Mets Pod. Connor Rogers, Joe DeMayo, fantastic show. Love them. Guests of the show. They brought up how if Yamamoto really does sign for $200 million or $200 plus million. And of course, we know that, the Japanese team gets a cut of that off the top. But regardless, if he signs for that much money, he would be within the top 10 all time in terms of pitchers that have gotten paid that type of cash. And he hasn't thrown a single pitch in Major League Baseball. It's wild when you think about it. It really is. And I'm not saying that it's not true. But I do think it's interesting how it's becoming more and more talked about. And I remember last year, and people in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember at one point last year, the Senga market was said to be him, he's going to end up getting $150 or $180 million. And I heard that, and I was like, there's no way this guy's going to get that kind of money. And then all Mets fans were pumped up when they found that he signed for $75 million or whatever. And it was such a drastically lower number that everyone thought, oh my God, it was a steal. Great job. They got him in here for that amount of years. Yes, there's an opt-out. Yes, there's injury clauses, all this, but it wasn't nearly the amount of money that everyone thought it would be. Now, this is a different This is a different story because, Senga a lot older than Yamamoto, but I'm still very curious. And, is this guy really going to top $200 million? Because we've seen teams, even teams that have money, be very weary of proven talents throwing them that much money, outside of the Garrett Coles, who's, pitched up to his contract in spades so far. But a lot of hesitancy when it comes to paying out that type of cash for an arm. And this is one that's coming over from Japan. So it's like, are they really going to pay that much money? It's going to be fascinating to watch. And if they do, God bless them. I'm all for it. I'm all about it. But I do think it's going to be interesting to see the overall dollars when it comes to Yamamoto. Let's see, Carson talking about here. Glasnow, Burns, Bieber, Cease, whether you still consider them frontline arms. Look, I'm about Glasnow. I'm about Burns. I'm about Cease. I think Cease is going to cost a lot more because he has 2 years of control. I'm not on Bieber. I'm really not. I was a big Shane Bieber fan a couple of years ago. But if you look at his numbers, I feel like they've really gone down. Strikeouts have gone down. Velocity has gone down. I feel like something's off. Still a good pitcher, but again, it would be price dependent. And to answer your question, I don't think I would consider him frontline anymore. I think there's a lot more talent in that Cleveland rotation where he can, settle back in. Like, he has the name right now because he's the more well-known and established one. But when I look at their arms, I like, well, Gavin Williams is nice, and Tanner Beebe is nice, and Tristan McKenzie. Like, they have some very interesting players, and he can kind of like disappear. So when you hear that name being shopped, everyone's like, oh my God, Shane Bieber. It's like, yeah, well, he's kind of been trending down the last couple of years. Paul Revere coming in with I'd rather have Justin Bieber. Fair enough. Also saying how 200 million would be top three. One of them is a pitcher from Washington, with just retired. Yeah, right. That being Steven Strasburg, obviously getting $245 million, forced to retire now. Sad, unfortunate for him. Still gets his money, but unfortunate that his career never really took off to the heights that many thought that he would. Shea being fair, also Shane Bieber is the innings eater, though. Just saying. And look, and that's something that I have been saying. This team desperately needs innings to be eaten. And like I said, I would have liked the Kyle Gibson. Is he worth $12 million? It's going to show you that the back end of this market's still going to get paid some good money. But innings are needed. I think that this team could definitely be in the Jordan Montgomery market, who's averaged 180 innings pitched a year. They can be in the Eduardo Rodriguez market, who's pitched over 185 innings throughout his career on average. So guys that can throw. It's not going to be all stars. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be all stars. We can have a good amount of success if you just have guys that can throw strikes. Throw strikes, provide innings, not kill the bullpen. That's going to be the biggest thing. If this team can get a couple of guys that can just pitch, but then really attack the bullpen, that's going to be a big help. If you're going to see a drastic difference in this team overall, because this roster and this bullpen was burnt out by the first half of June. They were done. They had nothing left, and there was still so much of the season left, and we saw what ended up happening. So how they go about attacking that is going to be very interesting, which is going to lead me into what bullpen. Before I get to bullpen, I'll bring up this one up from Carson as well. Bieber still has his plus pitch shape, but he's lost a lot of velocity. I don't really consider him a frontline arm. Right. So if he was someone that was fitting in because they were trying to get out from under him, if they weren't asking for much and he was slotting in as a 3, I don't mind it. But yeah, I don't think he's so much as the frontline ace that many thought he was and would be a handful of years ago. But to transition into the bullpen for a moment, we can come back to the starting in a minute. But when it comes to that bullpen, the argument that many are having, and I'm noticing, and I know not to call her out, but if Patty's still in here, I know Patty had mentioned, and she sent me a tweet earlier in the week when the Mets signed, I think it was Cole Sussler to a minor league deal. And it's like, oh, he has a 6 ERA. And it's like, who is this guy? It's not what we want. And I think that what many need to understand, and we talked about it on Mets Weekly, what many need to understand is that bullpens are fickle. They really are. And paying up for bullpen arms when your team's not ready yet, I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a big fan of trading premium pieces on a team or within a farm for, whether it's an elite 8th inning guy or a closer thing, unless that's your finishing piece. Bullpens are fickle year to year. You're never really quite sure what you're going to get. I think that we need to be patient with David Stearns and the development of how they're going to go about developing pitchers with the pitching lab now that they have, and how they're going to end up churning out talent and overall developing talent, because you can't go into free agency every year looking to reshape your entire bullpen. You have to be able to build people as well. You have to be able to pick from down low and say, hey, we're going to call up said player. I want to shout out Carson here because he brought up a great point on his show on Sunday, how, Mets fans, myself included, was so excited for the likes of a Bryce Montestioca, because we're like, wow, this guy throws hard. It's sharp. Like, things are breaking. This is a different type of reliever. Gets hurt, and then we don't see anything like that the rest of the way. You want to get more guys like that. And guess what? When you take on guys like that, maybe sometimes the command isn't there. Maybe the ERA is a little bit inflated. Maybe they need to work on some things. And those are the risks that you have to take and see if it works. Finding great bullpens, when you look around baseball, it's through development, and it's also, it's timing. It's the people that you have in charge when it comes to your pitchers about changing pitch selection, throwing a changeup instead of a curveball, throwing a sweeper instead of a slider, like whatever it may be. It's little things like that, and having those people in place are what's really going to formulate a bullpen. I'm not looking too much at numbers right now when it comes to these minor league deals for these guys that they're probably going to have come in, try to make camp, and see what happens from there. But look, we're still going to have people that come into this bullpen that are of a more known entity, guys that have done it before, guys that are seasoned. But at the same time, I think we need to get more upside and guys that throw different, guys that have arm talent. You have to have guys that throw hard. And I know I just talked about the scariness of throwing hard because of, pitch clock and more people getting hurt. But the way the game is, you have to get talent. You have to get guys that throw hard. And I felt for the longest time, outside of Edwin Diaz, this team has not had guys that throw hard. We look at people like Grant Hartwig. Yeah, I liked watching him. I thought he had some arm talent. But when we're digging that low and that's all we had, it's like, this is a problem. You can only watch Adam Ottavino throwing Frisbees for so long. And now he's gone. But point being, this team needs to get more talent. That's where I was going with that one. I want to scroll up the chat, see what's going on, catch up a little bit. Shay, going back to the starting rotation real quick. See, I don't think there's going to be that frontline number one arm this year with us. I think it's just going to be a bunch of 2 and 3 type pitchers to be more dependable than ace-like. And look, if that's the case, I have absolutely no problem with it. I do not have an issue with this team filling out and having competent pitchers out there every single night. Guys that can go out there that can give me. And look, we're past the day and age where it's, oh, I would love to have a guy that can go out there and give me 7 innings. Like, that's become more and more rare these days. Yes, I love that guy, but we don't see it that often anymore. So if I can get a guy that can consistently give me a strong 5 or a strong 6 innings, then yes, I'm ecstatic with that. If I have a couple of those guys, yes, because again, it's needed. This bullpen was destroyed by the lack of innings. Patty coming in. Yes, I did. Sussler, who, again, going back to what I had just said. Jay coming in here saying it took Senga a couple months to get used to the bigger baseball. Will this be an issue with Yamamoto also? Look, it could be. It absolutely can be. And 5-man rotation, 6-man rotation, needing to get more arms in that case, if that's what ends up happening. David Stearns had said in one of his winter meetings, little briefings, he had mentioned that he needed to have a conversation with Senga to talk about how they're going to go about handling his workload for the upcoming season. Are they going to stick to what they were doing? Are they ready to move to just a 5-man? It's either way, because if you bring in a Yamamoto, there's going to be that extra rest that's needed until he's ready, not only with the baseball itself, but just the overall rest time as well. Shay continuing, and I love the persistence, continuing his thought when it comes to relievers. I don't see how you do not sign Yariel Rodriguez. I will die on that hill. I'm very curious on Rodriguez's market, specifically when it comes to money. How much money is he going to get? Is he going to get a 3-year deal, 4-year deal? I'm curious to see what he can bring. And I'm with you. I think he belongs in the bullpen as opposed to some places that have him listed as a starter. I think he's going to end up in the bullpen. I think he has the stuff that can really carry over. Would definitely help us. If they want to bring him in, I am not going to complain about that one. Jordan Hicks, again, John's been a big proponent of that arm talent. At the very least, you can get a nice haul from him. Oh, and yeah, if it doesn't work out, you can obviously look to deal him, but he's going to get a multi-year deal. He's going to get money. He's going to get paid. But yeah, if you said to me, we're going to bring in Jordan Hicks and give him a 3-year deal, and he's going to set up Edwin Diaz or even spell Diaz in certain save situations, depending on back-to-backs and things like that. Look, you're not going to see me complain. 27 years old, I think 27, 28 years old, throws hard, 100 miles an hour, would give another, again, talented arm in that bullpen. I'm all about it. I really am. Let's see what else we got. It's things piling in here, and I love that you guys are having good conversation in here. Take a shot at Mr. Frisbee. While I'm scrolling through this, one thing I did want to say was obviously thank you. We're 45 minutes in. I'm not going to post this as a podcast, so there's no need for me to stop and do a break this week. This was just me wanting to test out how things would go if I just wanted to come on, talk with you guys, do a just basically like Q&A, back and forth, hit on a couple of things, and just have some fun with you guys. And keep the page humming like I wanted to do. That being said, since there is not going to be a break, but I do have to do some house cleaning. That being, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you're new here, I see 30 people are in here at the moment. I appreciate every single one of you. That means I hope that I have 30 thumbs up, because if there's 30 in it, I hope I got 30 thumbs up. It would help me get more people to see the actual video. Sub the channel. I'm working very hard. John's working hard as well to pump out content, our shorts, putting out more lives, things like that. Trying to grow the subscriber count has been the biggest thing for me. So again, constant updates, ideas, questions, things of that nature are always going to be on this channel. So again, if you're new here, welcome. I hope you stay. We have a lot of fun in the chat. 30 people here. Again, I hope if you're here, hit that thumbs up wherever it is on the screen that you're watching me, right over here. Hit that thumbs up, or over here, wherever it is. Hit the thumbs up. It means a lot. Sub the channel. I think I'm 11 away from 400. The goal is to get to 500 before the year is up. I'm pushing hard for that one. Then obviously to get to 1,000 to get monetized and things of that nature. So now that all that is done, I hope you hit the thumbs up. I lost the purse, but that's okay. But hit that thumbs up and we'll continue the conversation and keep having some fun and talking some Mets. Okay. Carlos asking a simple question. Carlos Ortiz, why can't Yamamoto start training to pitch every 5th day? I think it's again, I think when you're so used to doing something for a long period of time, it takes some time. And even with the comment, I think it was Jay that said it before, talking about the baseball, it took Sang a while to get used to the baseball. Look, you can practice all you want. It's going to take some time. And yeah, you can start practicing, getting used to things now, as opposed to having to do it in season. But I think a lot of times those live reps go a long way as well towards bettering someone and getting used to something. Because let's be honest, and if anyone here plays baseball, they would know as well. When you're just practicing, it's kind of hard to mimic what it's like being out there in front of people and all those different things and taking in all those emotions and the adrenaline and all that stuff. So, understanding all that too. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm sure he is preparing himself. He's a well-trained top flight athlete. I'm sure he's going to do everything he can to pitch every 5th day. But if they have to go to a 6-man to start, I have no issue with that. Let's see. John, I did not see this one. I read that Gausman is on the trade block. I'd make that deal in the heartbeat. Now, was this from somebody that is reputable? Was this someone who actually is worth the time? Because I did see one today. I don't know how trustworthy the person would be, but I did see a rumor talking about how the Jays were potentially shopping Bo Bichette to Chicago, that being the Cubs. Don't know how much I buy that one. I still think Bo Bichette is in the plans for Toronto, so I'm not sure why they would do that. But I saw that one, so I'm just want to make sure that if you read that from someone who was reputable when it comes to Gausman being available. And again, that's interesting because again, that's another Jays player. So are the Jays clearing space because they want to offer all the money in the world to Ohtani? I'm not sure. I'm not sure on that one. Let's see, where else are we? Thank you, Paul, in the comments saying, let's go Slackers with the button. Look, 26 in here. I hope I have at least 26 thumbs up. I really appreciate it. And if you're new here, make sure you sub the channel as well. Sub the channel. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's take a look. Where else are we? Carson saying Yamamoto could adjust to 5 days since he's only 25, but I wouldn't push it to start it out. I agree. Hey, look, you're younger, obviously. Body handles things differently, bounces back quicker as opposed to when you get a little bit older. But yeah, I think that would be something that could eventually be the standard for him. And maybe he can be that way by midseason for whatever team he goes to, whether it's the Mets, Chicago, Boston, whoever it may be, LA. I definitely think it's possible. Okay. Take a look. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Try and find that. I appreciate that. But yeah, we'll keep the comments rolling and we'll keep flowing with you guys when it comes to questions or thoughts or anything really, because I've basically covered the stuff that I wanted to get through. But one thing, this I will hit on. Expectations for Mets fans. I think that the expectations for us Mets fans needs to be within order this offseason. I really do. I believe that this team is going to spend because it has to, because of need. To answer your question right there real quick, Ant, with Swanson there, the rumor was Swanson plays short and they would move Bichette to third. Again, how true that is, I'm not sure. But the expectations for this team, again, they have to spend money, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to spend top end money. Yes, I do think that they will go after a Yamamoto. Yes, if they miss in that market, I do think that they can go after someone like an Eduardo Rodriguez for $85 million, or even a Jordan Montgomery if that market doesn't go too crazy and he goes into the 100 area. If he's below that, that's a market that they could potentially get into. But I think age and what's available is a big determining factor for this team. And I think expectations and having a sense of reality is very important for Mets fans this offseason, because I think with how things have gone over the last 2 years, they think that they're just going to spend all the money in the world. And when they don't, and they have all these ideas cooked up in their head that don't happen, then they get angry, then they get pissed off, then they complain, then they say they're not trying, then they call them the Wilpons, and they do all this nonsense where it's like, again, calculated spending, understanding the types of players that are available and what makes sense for this team based off of where they are. That's the most important thing. Does Yamamoto make sense? Yes. If it takes $210 million, would I still do it? Yes, because I don't care about money, because he's 25 years old and it makes sense. Again, I love Sonny Gray. Does Sonny Gray make sense for this team at 34 years old? No, he does not. Do 40-year-old pitchers like Verlander and Scherzer make sense for this team as it is right now? No, it doesn't. It has to get younger. It has to find ways to get younger. If that means trading for a 29-year-old Tyler Glasnow, so be it. If that means trading for a Dylan Cease, so be it. A Corbin Burns, so be it. Getting younger is the most important thing. And you don't have all those options on the free agent market. So you're not going to be throwing ridiculous amounts of money at older players just to fill your roster. You're going to spend, but it's going to be calculated spending. And I hope that expectations are proper for Mets fans throughout this process. I know I say that. It'll fall on deaf ears. Mets Twitter will be ablaze when they don't get every single person, or God forbid when Yamamoto signs somewhere else, which very well could happen. It's tempering those expectations a little bit. I'm not saying don't be hungry for things, because you should as Mets fans. But I'm just saying there has to be a little bit of a sense of reality here in terms of the amount that they're going to spend, because there's a certain type of player that I think that they are hunting at these spots. So I'm hoping that resonates with some. I know it'll bother some people, but I hope it resonates with some, because there's a lot of work that this team needs. There's a lot of work that it needs, and there are pieces that work now and that will work in the future. But you have to supplement those pieces to really continue to grow and to finally reach that sustainability that we all very much crave. Thank you, John. Tag me. I appreciate it. I'll check that out in a second. Shay, I am so glad that you just said this, because if Ant's still here, I said this to Ant the other day when we were talking about things. Realistic expectations, the 2005 Mets record, 83-79 as the baseline that we can improve upon things and move on from there. Look, I said the exact same thing, so I love that we're on the same wavelength here, and Ant can confirm that if he's still in the chat. But yeah, I said the 2005 Mets would be a great way to look at how this team can build. You have certain pieces that make sense, that can help. If you supplement them the right way, you can grow. Was 05, I believe 05 was Willie's first year too. Was it? Or was it 04? 05, I want to say it was Willie's first year. Carlos Mendoza's first year. Like, you can show that, oh, you're a good team and you're feisty and you're fighting and you're winning games, but you're just not right there yet. You're not there yet. It's going to be a little bit longer. And then obviously the Mets blew up in 06. And then, yes, they were still strong teams in 07 and 08, but we all know how those things ended. Point being, you can have that type of year where you're a feisty, scrappy team that wins games, and you can build and grow from that. There's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't. And if this team, look, I think if this team, if you told me 83-79 based off of the roster that I showed you before, this thing right here, looking at this roster on how bad it is, and you told me that this team somehow ended up by obviously, a couple of moves here and there, getting 83 wins, I would take that. I would take that as a growing point to then build from there. Again, it's going to take time, and I think that's what Mets fans are tired of hearing, because again, like, I've been saying, you want to win, and I have no problem with wanting to win. We all do. But obviously I'm comfortable with, you know, building character since 1962, or since I became a Mets fan. Building character for the longest time, because we haven't been doing that much winning. But I get being tired and wanting to win. I understand it completely. But this team needs to be reworked, reshaped. That's why you bring in a David Stearns. He has to get to work and do these things. And that's going to be the biggest thing. Let's see where we are. I wanted to check out John's tag real quick on who it was. Shit. Okay, so again, I'm not sure how much I would trust the source, but because it was also piggybacking off of the one that I said before about Bo Bichette. But look, if they're trying to clear money for some reason, I'm curious as to why. Because I think that they might be in potential teardown mode if that happens then, because if you're shopping the likes of Bo Bichette and Kevin Gausman, like, I wouldn't be shocked if they put Vlad out there next, because, at that point, what are you really doing? I'm not really sure what you're trying to accomplish. Thank you, Carlos. I appreciate for you liking what I just said, as always. My expectation is that the Mets finish above 500. All right, nothing wrong with that. Carson coming in, I'd make more trades than signings, to be honest. Still a lot of losers on this roster, even with it being at 27. And a lot of them are in that bullpen, like we talked about on Mets Weekly. A lot in that bullpen. So, still a lot of work to be done. Douglas Barnes, expectations. Cohen buys everything. Everything. Look, that's the way people see it. I said on day one when Cohen bought the team, and me and John started this show on episode 1. I had mentioned that, look, you got to understand, you're not going to have superstars everywhere. That is not how you build winning teams. It's not. You can spend a lot of money. The Rangers prove that. $800 million over 2 years, whatever it was, to win a World Series. Yes, you can spend money, but they spent money in particular places. Up the middle, some pitching. You got to be calculated, like I said before, on how you spend given money. If you look, there's one way to spend money, the way Cohen did last year, and it didn't work. There's another way to spend money, like the Rangers did, and everything clicks. It's the types of players that you bring in. It's the people that you have around said players. It's the culture that you create to try and bring in winning. And that's the one thing that this team has had a hard time doing over a consecutive time frame, if you will, and that's winning. It's a sad part when you think about the amount of times, a majority of us have been alive, people around my age, I should say 35, the amount of, I should say the lack of times that you've seen your favorite team, and the Mets are my favorite team out of all sports, the lack of times that you've actually seen them in the playoffs. It's really sad when you think about it, but you're trying to reach that sustainability. '05 Mets, the beginning of Twilight Piazza. Don't make me sad. I'm having a good time here, Carson. Don't make me sad. Willie's first year was '05. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you. Building characters since 1962. That's right, baby. That's right. Always. Been talking. I'll eat some water. Carlos coming in. We will win. It's just how we will get there. We already learned that to take shortcuts. Look, and the shortcuts, I said this when it was happening. He was copying the early Dodgers when McCourt finally sold and they got him out. Those early Dodgers teams took on a lot of money. They wanted to try and put a product on the field that was good enough to put people in the stands, to watch the team, to try and build things up as behind the scenes and still provide something on the field. And you can appreciate that. It takes time. And, everyone automatically assumes that, they hung on to that 3 to 5 years thing and they wanted to, oh, he said 3 to 5 years, we're not going to win. This guy's a loser. He says he was going to get all these things. He doesn't get anybody. It's like, I understand what he was trying to accomplish and it didn't work. And the good thing about it, the good thing is because he has the amount of money that he has, he's able to pivot, which he did, rightfully so. Pivoted at the deadline last year, changed course, and did what really needed to be done from the moment he walked in. And that was restart. That's the way I had always felt. But there's nothing wrong with how he went about it because he has all this money. He doesn't care that he's losing it. I mean, I'm sure he does, but it's not going to stop him trying to improve. So you can afford to pay out other players, to bring in minor leaguers, to build a system, and you can get to where you want to go. It's just going to take time. And I know Mets fans are tired of hearing about taking time, but eventually we will get there. We will. Yuki Matsui is coming into the chat and letting us know, wake up, sleepy Stearns. I know he's missing out on all these non-tendered players, not picking any of them up. This guy's a bum. Speaking of non-tenders, Brandon Woodruff, I'm about it. I forgot to bring him up before. I'm about it. I would bring him in 2 years, let him rehab, see what happens in next year. I would definitely do it. Obviously, the Stearns connection there. We'll see if that can be something that is worked out, but I would definitely bring in Brandon Woodruff. I don't think it could hurt. Carson's expectations is that Squirrel with anger issues gets traded. Then I'll be happy until April 2025. I do think Jeff McNeil could get traded. Will he? That's the question. I think he can, though. And then Carlos coming in saying, yes, he pivoted. He wasn't stubborn nor egotistical about it. He pivoted, and now he will be better for it. 100%. 100%. He literally bought himself a Farsons that's now ranked 4 from 17 a year ago. And that's the biggest thing. And I know we have our opinions on given players. Carson, I know you have your opinions on given players, what have you. But again, regardless of how we feel on given prospects, the overall rankings, the fact is you have more talent in your system. Those talented players become your lottery tickets. Now, those lottery tickets can be used for one of two things. It could be the cash in and it becomes a star for you, or you cash in to bring in a star from elsewhere. That's what it is. Like, you have more now that allows you to go out and have conversations with other teams about top-end players because you can. A year ago, could this team actually call the Chicago White Sox and say, hey, what do you want for Luis Robert? What do you want for Dylan Cease? No, they would have laughed at them and they said, you got nothing in your system. Goodbye. Now there's some more talent and it's still growing and they want to keep growing. That's why they don't want to sign players with qualifying offers. They don't want to lose picks. Okay. That's why they're doing these things. They want to create that capital so that they can decide what works and what doesn't. What can I trade? What can I improve myself elsewhere? Having those lottery tickets is key. We just saw before. I just brought it up. 23%. You draft 329 people for Chris Gross in Houston. 77 out of 329. 329 baseball players is a lot. 77 graduate. 23%, highest number. It's crazy. It really is. But having those pieces goes a long way in creating turnover within a system of pumping out more and more guys. Like when you look at the Dodgers, sorry to be ranting here, but when you look at the Dodgers, a majority of the players that we've talked about for years when it comes to their system, a lot of times they don't even get called up. They get dealt away. And the ones that have been called up have been Gavin Lux, talked about him forever. It's been banged up. It's a good ball player, I think, but he's been banged up, but he hasn't really provided, but he's still a name that you hear about a lot. A lot of turnover within that system that they keep on trading guys to try and win. And then you think, oh my God, the Dodgers traded everybody. And then you look at their ranking and they're probably still in the top 10 when it comes to their system because there's just this nonstop machine. That's what you want. That's what you're trying to cultivate. That's what you're trying to create because it gives you an opportunity then to always have something, whether it's to plug in a player at a position that you're ready to allow them to grow in so you can spend money elsewhere and they're making cheap money. So you got a cheap second baseman, you got a cheap shortstop, you got a cheap third baseman, whatever it may be. Then you can take that money and you can say, I'm going to go buy a big right fielder like the Dodgers did. I'll call up Gavin Lux. I'll sign a Max Muncy or whatever it is. And these guys are making peanuts. And then they say, you know what? We got enough money. I'm going to trade for Mookie Betts and sign him. I'm going to sign Freddie Freeman. Like, that's what you want to do. That's what the Mets are trying to aspire to be. Like, when I hear the Dodger way, like, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to emulate the fact that they can grow their own system, allow said players to come up, potentially plug in. That's cheaper money there. So then you can go out into the field, into free agency, and use it for those finishing pieces that you need. Whereas the Mets right now are using free agency to really fill out a team, which is why they haven't been winning the way they should be. Carson coming in. Prospects are trade ammo. Never plug them in before debut. Hard to disagree with that one. Carlos, the Dodgers have built a consistent winner by having options as to how to build it. Their farm system has produced diamonds, but has also allowed them to make trades for proven talent while still having money. 100%. Exactly. Hey, there you go. Yeah, that's yeah. We're on the same wavelength there, Carlos. But yeah, that's really a lot of the stuff that I had. If anyone wants to talk about anything else, I'd be glad to before I get out of here. But I've had a blast. I'm always a little hesitant to come on solo because I love working off of John. John's a host and he does everything great. But I love coming on here and testing myself and seeing how I handle things. If you guys enjoyed it, please, again, thumbs up, sub the channel. I'm going to do this more often. I'm going to keep pumping out those shorts as well to, again, keep as many eyes on this page as I can because I'm trying to, grow it more. And I think that we have something there. I really do. I'm trying to grow within this given niche. There's a lot of great content creators out there for this, for our Mets. Carson and Mets Weekly. You got Wardy, obviously. I've been supporting and giving a lot of love to Kristen Nelson with the Interstate Mets. A lot of good guys out there. There really are. And of course, the well-known ones, the Subway to Shays, the Ants, the Mets Pod, obviously, is a big one as well. Love them. Metsed Up, Mark and James. All it's a fantastic space to get to know people, and I love interacting with each and every one of you and having a good time every single Wednesday. Yuki, as you came in, I did mention this at the beginning, but I will bring it up again. Good news for the New York Mets. Yahoo Japan reported on Wednesday Yamamoto has a desire to play with other Japanese players in the majors. And again, we have a good one. I would love to see Yamamoto and Seng at the top of this rotation. I think it would be awesome. Will it happen? I'm hoping it does. I really am hoping it does. But we'll see. It's not often that you see a 25-year-old pitcher, stud pitcher, available. A lot of times when stud pitchers get out, they're 29 years old, pushing 30, and you're wondering, should I give this guy 6-7 years? This guy's 25. You could easily give this guy a 7-year deal. Easily. 7-8 years. What? Nola just got 7 years, right? 7 years, 172 million. Nola is Nola 31 years old? Is he getting paid till he's 38? Maybe. Possibly. I think it's possible. John coming in here, offense, maybe JT for backup third baseman and DH, and maybe Adam Duvall type. Look, I am all about Justin Turner. We talked about it on Mets Weekly. I know Frank over on Mets Weekly was a little bit against it, and I understood his point wholeheartedly. I thought he brought up a lot of good points, actually, when it came to Turner. But for me, the biggest thing that I can't shake is, the DH production that we've gotten and the fact that he went out last year at 38 years old and he was able to produce 23 home runs and 96 RBIs. Yes, the park plays a big factor there, but he was a DH. He was a DH. So I think you can mitigate the risk a little bit because he is a DH. You're not putting him out in the field as much anymore, so it could keep him healthier. He played a lot of baseball last year. The Red Sox did a great job of keeping him healthy. They kind of showed a little bit of a blueprint. I think he knew that, which is why he opted out of his deal because he thinks he can get more. And I think he can too. I would not be shocked if Justin Turner got a 2-year deal for honestly, if he got 2 years, $30 million from someone, it wouldn't shock me. I don't know if it's going to be the Mets, but that would, if he got 2 years for 15 mil a year, it wouldn't shock me. Or even a 1 year with an option that's attainable through stats. He might sign something like that. But I love Justin Turner. I would love to see him come back. I don't believe in the curses of him coming back and him being some kind of bum because he was when he was here. I don't believe that. I think Justin Turner is a good ball player, and I would accept him as a DH. Yamamoto is a pitch command robot made in a lab. Blank check. Look, I listen to people that know more than me. I'm not stubborn enough to think that I know everything because I don't. The only thing I know about Yamamoto, if I'm being honest, is the things that others have said and what I've seen. And obviously all the highlights are him being phenomenal. But I will listen to a Carson because he's doing the work and he's letting me know. David's a frequenter of our chat. He has watched a lot of Japanese baseball, and he let me know. I was like, hey, can you give me a rundown on Yamamoto? And he gave me a big block of text that I read, and it was fantastic. And he told me the Mets should do everything that they can to get this guy. He's the real deal. And I'll listen to people like that because it's the eye test. They've seen it more than me. I'm all about it. I really am. Darren Rivera. I think Darren, were you in the Mets Weekly? It's just your first time here. If it is, welcome. Thank you for coming over. Senga's experience as a pitcher could sway Yamamoto, especially since he went through a transition that Yamamoto needs to go through. Absolutely. Absolutely. And look, I really think that having, a fellow Japanese player could help. I know that they put that out there. Obviously, it's not going to be the end all be all because you're not going to, an agent is not going to pigeonhole the market for his client into saying, oh, well, if you don't have a Japanese player, my client's not coming to you. It's like, no, they're not going to do that. But I think it's going to help. I really do. And the fact that Senga had the success that he did, I think it can really, really go a long way in helping us overall. So I'm very excited to see how this goes about. I really am. If anyone has anything else, I'll be glad to answer or play off of some kind of comments. Otherwise, I will start to get out of here in a couple of minutes. Imanga has better fastball. Yamamoto has better depth. I'll gladly take both right now. Look, I've been doing a little more work on Shota, and I think he's going to be pretty good too. And it's like he's getting lost in the shuffle. He's getting lost in the shuffle because he's going up against a 25-year-old that has the hype machine behind him. And again, Imanga, according to Carson, Imanga has a better fastball. I believe, Carson, correct me if I'm wrong, Imanga had a better strikeout rate, K per 9. I think you had mentioned that. I want to double check and make sure if that was proper. John coming in, Shota was great in the World Baseball Classic. I'd love to see him sign here with a high. So again, his high K percentage. So yeah, so he was of that better strikeout rate. Look, guys, I want talent. That's what I want. I want upside. I want talent. I think it's time for this team to get younger, as Carson has said before, as we've said before. You look at last year in baseball, the most exciting teams in baseball that are on the come up, they're all young. Baltimore, young. Cincinnati, young. The team that made the World Series, the Arizona Diamondbacks, young, driven by young, hungry talent, young, hungry players. That's what we need here. That's what we need here. And that's what I'm willing to wait, if I have to, a little bit to piece this whole thing together. Because that, if I have to wait for that, I'll wait. Because that's what I want to say. I want to watch fun baseball. It was a chore last year. It really was. I love doing this show, but watching the Mets last year was difficult. And I watch every game. Every game. But it was difficult last year to watch them. 100%. Comments on Ohtani. I'll keep my comments on Ohtani quick. That being incredible, generational, all-time, might be the greatest baseball player we've ever seen. Because he does from a hitting perspective and a pitching perspective. I don't think he's coming here. I don't think he wants to come here. They're going to call. They're going to try. And I don't blame him, because you'd be stupid not to. You have to call and try, because he might be the greatest player of all time. I think he stays in LA. I think he ends up with the Dodgers. I really do. And if not the Dodgers, the Giants. But I say that because I'm still a little iffy on it, because there's not much around him then. So that's why I'm still leaning heavy on the Dodgers. But the Mets will call, because they should. I'll get to Carlos's in 1 second. I'll close on yours, Carlos. Carson saying more strikeouts, but a little more walks, mainly just because of more aggressive slot motion, but still not noticeable. Okay. All right. So believe me, I'll take both. I'll take either or. Just talent. That's what it needs. Shota has more command issues than control issues. Got it. Okay. It's good. Good stuff. Good to know. Where were we? Oh, Carlos. The Juan Soto topic. I've talked about Juan Soto a lot. I love Juan Soto. I've had, dreams of him in the orange and blue on this team in 2025 for maybe the last 3 or 4, or ever since Cohen came in. So the last 3 years, I've had the idea that he was going to be a New York Met. Will it happen? It's possible. Should you trade? Yes, if you ever have an opportunity to trade for someone and the pieces match, I do it. The Padres do not have a leg to stand on when it comes to asking price, because it's 1 year and it's a Boris client. You have no leg to stand on. I look to other players that were non-Boris clients that did the same thing. I can look to a Mookie Betts. I can look to a Francisco Lindor. 1 year left. Didn't get much in return for that player. Same thing would happen here, regardless of how great Juan Soto is. What I will say is this. The Padres don't have a leg to stand on, but they can still lean towards teams that are more pitching rich. The Padres are going to lose upwards potentially of 700 innings pitched through free agency this year. If that happens, that means that they need to fill in those given spots. And if they can't do that through paying people because they're low on money, that means that they're going to have to trade for it. So that means that the asking price for a Juan Soto would be more so along the lines of starting pitching and finding players that can fit into that that area of need, as opposed to just settling for what the Mets are rich in, that being hitting prospects as opposed to the pitching side. Because I don't think the likes of Christian Scott and Dominic Hamill and Tyler Stewart and Blade Tidwell, I don't think they're going to deal away from that as much as they should for a Juan Soto. I don't think the Padres are going to want that. I think some other teams that are more pitching rich could offer 1 or 2 players that are better and land him. Should you trade for him? I would. Could they? It's possible. Will he probably end up somewhere else? I think so. But thank you, Carlos. I appreciate that. But that being said, I'm pumped up that I have 31 people in here right now. Once again, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Sub the channel. Constant shorts coming. More lives like this. We'll be back next week with an actual podcast episode for Till Mets Do Us Part. Will be episode 120. I appreciate every single one of you for being here, for coming in and spending some time with me for the last hour and 20 minutes. It's never easy doing things solo, but as you can hear, I got a little baby crying in the background, so I'm going to have to go tend to that and handle some bedtime and things of that nature. But once again, thank you so much, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Have a great day with your families. Have a good time. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for the support. That being said, I'm going to hit that music and we're going to get out of here. But once again, thank you. It's been fun. All 29 of you that are in here, make sure again, thumbs up, sub the channel. We're almost at 400. Let's get to that at some point today. I would really appreciate it. That being said, I'll see you guys, and I am out.